Tuggy the Tugboat, written by Jean Horton Berg in 1958. Tuggy Tugboat lived quietly in a snug little cove in Sleepy Creek. He lived just beyond the bend where the creek met the Chattahoochee River. For a long time, Tuggy had been the fastest, bravest, sturdiest tugboat on the river, and he could remember many exciting adventures. One time, he was pulling a string of 6 big barges filled with coal. Each one was fastened to another with a tow line. A sudden storm blew up. The sky grew black as night. Thunder rumbled, lightning flashed, the wind howled until the river was filled with giant choppy waves. 2 sailors crawled along Tuggy's deck toward the stern. They wanted to be sure that the tow line was tight. Suddenly one of the men slipped and fell with a splash into the rough, dark water. "Help!" he cried. "Men overboard!" shouted his friend. Quickly Tuggy stopped, so fast that his boilers whistled with steam and his engine rattled noisily. The wind and the waves yanked at him, but Tuggy wouldn't budge. He held fast as the sailor took hold of the life-preserver that his shipmates had thrown to him. Only when the sailor had been pulled to safety did Tuggy move on again. Another time, when there hadn't been any rain for weeks, there was hardly enough water in the river to keep the bigger ships afloat. A big oil tanker, streaming upstream, got stuck in the mud. Her engines coughed and sputtered. The tanker tried as hard as she could to get free, but was unable to move an inch. Then along came Tuggy. He slid up to the tanker, and just as soon as the tow line was made fast to her, began to pull. Tuggy churned up muddy foam and wavelets as the tow rope tightened, and for a few minutes it looked as though he was going to be stuck too. Then there was a shout from the sailors on the tanker's deck. "Hooray! She's moving!" they shouted, and sure enough, she was. In just a little while, Tuggy had pulled the tanker out into the middle of the river, where the water was deep enough for her to move along on her own power. One evening, after supper, Tuggy was taking a little nap at his dock in Sleepy Creek. Captain Larson, who owned him, was sitting on deck reading a book when 2 men climbed aboard. They talked to Captain Larson. At first the captain sounded excited. Then he sounded sad. Finally the men left, and Captain Larson stepped into Tuggy's cabin. "Well, Tuggy," he said, "I guess we don't have a job anymore. Those are the men we've been working for, and they say we can't work for them anymore unless we have your steam boiler taken out and a diesel engine put in. We don't have enough money to do that. Besides, we like steam boilers, don't we?" He patted Tuggy's sides. "I guess we'll spend the rest of our days tied up here at our own dock, fishing and watching the world float by." For a long time, that's just what they did, except that now and then they took a little trip upstream or down. Captain Larson insisted on keeping Tuggy's engine in good working order. "I don't care if he's just a houseboat now," Captain Larson would say. "His engine is as important to him as my legs are to me. I'm going to keep it in apple pie order." One fine morning, Captain Larson decided to take a trip up the river to visit his friend, Captain Anderson, who lived on an old houseboat just outside the city. Tuggy pulled into the big dock, close to Captain Anderson's houseboat. Captain Larson tied the ropes fast and then went to see his friend. "Ahoy!" he shouted. "Anyone on board?" Captain Anderson popped out of the cabin of his little boat. "Hello!" he answered. "You're just in time. Today is my grandson Johnny's birthday, and I'm having a party for him." Then he called out, "Come out on deck, boys, and say hello to Captain Larson." In a moment, 6 little boys scrambled out of the cabin. "Happy birthday, Johnny," said Captain Larson. "You and your friends look as though you're having a pretty good time." "Oh, we are," said Johnny. We're pretending that we are the ship's crew and that we're really sailing out into the river. If Grandpa had a good engine in his boat, he'd take us for a real ride." Captain Larson thought for a moment. "Johnny," he said, "how would you and your friends like to take a ride aboard the good ship Tuggy as a birthday gift?" The boys were as excited as could be, and in a few minutes were on Tuggy's deck. Then, with a loud toot-toot from the whistle, they were on their way. For miles and miles they chugged up the river, past the city harbor, busy with boats both big and small, and past the shipyards where new ships were being built. Then they turned around and made their way back down the river, back to Captain Anderson's dock. "Thank you, Captain Larson," Johnny said as he and his friends were leaving. "This is really the best birthday I've ever had." "Thank you," said the others. "We certainly had a wonderful time." "You're mighty welcome, boys," said Captain Larson. "Tuggy and I had a good time, too." As he and Tuggy chugged on down river to their own dock, Captain Larson thought and thought. His eyes began to twinkle. Then, "Why not?" he said out loud. "Why not, indeed? If those boys liked it, other boys would like it, and girls too. I'll do it." So now there's a neat little sign beside Tuggy's dock. It says, "Tuggy's Excursions, Children Only." And hardly a day goes by when Tuggy isn't busy carrying a group of boys and girls up and down the river. Surely Tuggy and Captain Larson are now happier than they have ever been before. The end.